She woke up with sand in her mouth, her wrists tied behind her back, and her face pressed against dry grass. The air was hot and heavy, and the only sound she could hear was the wind brushing through the trees. For a moment, she didn't move. She didn't know where she was. Her head throbbed, her arms ached, and her lips were cracked. Slowly, painfully, she opened her eyes. Nothing looked familiar. She was lying in a wild forest, surrounded by tall trees, scattered rocks, and the distant sound of something moving. Her clothes were dirty, ripped at the shoulder. Her shoes were missing. Her heart started racing. She turned her head and saw no road, no house, no sign of anyone. Just emptiness. Wild emptiness. She struggled to sit up, groaning as the ropes dug into her skin. She remembered flashes of car ride, someone shouting, and then darkness. Who brought her here? Why? She tried to scream, but her voice was dry. No one answered. She twisted her wrists, pushing against the ropes. They hurt, but she didn't stop. She kept pulling, biting her lip to stay quiet. Finally, after what felt like forever, the rope gave way. Her hands were free. She rubbed her wrists, then stood up shakily. Every part of her body protested, but she had to move. The forest wasn't just quiet, it felt like it was watching her. Every branch seemed to whisper. Every shadow made her jump. She picked a direction and started walking. No plan, no clue, just a need to survive. The sun was high. Her throat burned. Her legs felt weak, but she didn't stop. Not until she heard it. A low growl, from the bushes. She froze, eyes wide, her breath caught. Something was there. A wild animal? A wolf. She turned slowly in. That's when she saw him. A man, but not like any man she'd seen before. He was tall, bare-chested, his skin marked with paint or mud. His hair was long, wild, his eyes sharp but calm. He didn't speak. He didn't smile. He just stood between her and whatever was in the bushes. The growl stopped. She stared at him, her body shaking. He didn't move. She wanted to scream, to run, but something in his eyes stopped her. He looked more like the forest than a person. She whispered, "Who are you?" But he said nothing, just pointed at the ground, then at her feet. She looked down, blood, a small cut on her leg she hadn't even noticed. He stepped closer. She backed away. He raised his hand, slowly, showing he meant no harm. Then, without a word, he dropped something in front of her, a piece of fruit. She looked at it, then back at him. Was this a trap? She didn't know, but her hunger won. She picked it up and took a bite. It was sweet. Her knees gave out. She sat down, breathing heavily. The man turned and disappeared into the trees. She didn't know what to think. Who was he? Why didn't he speak? Why had he helped her? Maybe he was the one who left her here. Maybe he was watching her the whole time. The thought made her heart race. She stood again and started walking the opposite way. She had to find a road, a village, anything. Hours passed. The forest changed thicker, darker. She was weaker now, dizzy, her steps slow. Then, a sharp pain. Her foot hit something. A trap. A wooden snare hidden in the grass. She fell hard. Her leg caught. She screamed. The pain was unbearable. She tried pulling, kicking, but it only got tighter. Tears ran down her face. "Help," she cried, even though she knew no one would hear, but someone did. He returned. The same wild man. He ran to her, dropped to his knees, and began working on the trap. His hands were fast, rough, but careful. In seconds, it was open. She pulled her leg out, sobbing. He looked at her wound, then tore a strip of cloth from his own clothes and wrapped it around her ankle. She watched him, stunned. His face showed no fear, no anger, just quiet focus. She whispered, "Thank you." He didn't reply, but he picked her up, carried her like she weighed nothing, and walked deep into the trees. She didn't fight him. Her body was too tired, and a strange part of her trusted him. He brought her to a small shelter made of branches and leaves. It wasn't a house, but it was safe. He placed her down gently, gave her water from a hollowed gourd, and covered her with a fur blanket. Then he sat across from her, watching the forest, like a guard. She looked at him for a long time. "What are you?" she asked softly. He didn't answer, but his eyes flicked to hers, and for a brief moment, she felt like he knew her. Not from today, from before that night. As she drifted to sleep, she heard him speak for the first time, in a low whisper, a name, her name, and suddenly, she wasn't sure who had saved who. The fire crackled softly in the night. The girl lay under the fur blanket, awake but pretending to sleep. The pain in her leg had eased, but her mind was full of questions. The man sat nearby, legs crossed, staring into the flames like they were speaking to him. He hadn't said another word since whispering her name. She wanted to believe it was her imagination, that maybe she had dreamed it. But deep inside, she knew he knew her name before she ever said it. That wasn't a coincidence. That was a secret, one that frightened her. When morning came, the forest was alive with silent birds, rustling leaves, running water in the distance. The man stood and left the shelter without a word. She sat up slowly, testing her injured leg. It still hurt, but she could move. She looked around the shelter. It was built with care, not something random. Whoever he was, he had lived in the wild a long time. He knew how to survive. And maybe, if she stayed close, she would survive too. He returned carrying wild berries, roots, and something wrapped in leaves. He set them beside her and backed away. She picked up the food carefully and tasted it. It wasn't bad. Her hunger was stronger than her fear now. She ate slowly, eyes fixed on him. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. No answer. He sat down watching the forest again. "What's your name?" She tried again. Still nothing. He didn't even look at her. "Do you live here alone?" She pushed. Silence. She sighed and leaned back. Talking to him felt like talking to a tree, but then she noticed something, a scar on his arm. A long old scar, shaped almost like a hook. It looked familiar. Her heartbeat quickened. She had seen that scar before, long ago, when she was a child. In a picture, a boy, younger, smiling beside her parents. That same scar on his arm. But how was that possible? She didn't ask about it, not yet. Instead, she watched him as he cleaned a knife, shaped wood into arrows, tied traps with dried grass. He wasn't wild like an animal. He was focused, skilled. Maybe people called him savage because they didn't understand him. Maybe they feared what they couldn't control. But she was beginning to think he wasn't the dangerous one. Later that afternoon, he motioned for her to follow. She hesitated, then stood slowly. He waited until she caught up. They walked through the forest in silence. He moved like he belonged to the trees, avoiding every branch, stepping softly on the leaves. She limped behind him, trying to copy his steps. They reached a small river. The water was clear. He filled 2 gourds and handed her one. She drank. Cold water had never tasted so good. While she drank, he pulled something from a leather pouch and handed it to her. It was a small round stone, carved with strange symbols. She turned it in her hand. "What is this?" she asked. He pointed, at her heart, then at the stone. Then he closed her hand around it. She stared at him. "You want me to keep it?" He nodded once. That night she sat by the fire again, turning the stone over and over. It was smooth, but the carvings felt old. She thought about the scar, the photo, her name on his lips. It couldn't all be chance. She had to know. "Did you know me before?" she asked quietly. He looked up but said nothing. "When I was little, did you live near us?" Still no answer. She stood up, limped toward him, and pulled the necklace from under her shirt. A small silver pendant hung from it, shaped like a leaf. "Do you recognize this?" she whispered. He stared at it for a long time. Then, slowly, he reached into his pouch and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. He unfolded it. It was the same pendant, only older, rusty, broken, she gasped. Where did you get that?" she asked. His lips parted slightly. "Same place as you." Her knees went weak. She sat down hard, heart pounding. He could speak. His voice was rough, broken, but clear enough. "You do know me," she whispered. He nodded. "I was there," he said. "Long ago. Before the fire." She froze. "What fire?" He looked at the trees. "Your house. The night they took you." Her hands trembled. "You saw it." He nodded again. "They burned it. Took you. Thought I was dead." She stared at him in shock. Who are you?" He touched his chest. "Iran." Her breath caught. The name hit her like a storm. Iran, the boy in the picture. The one her parents called brave. The one who disappeared when she was 5. "I thought you died," she said, eyes filling with tears. "I did," he whispered. "In the world. Not here." She reached out, touched his hand. He didn't pull away. After all this time, after all the silence, the wild forest had returned someone she thought was lost forever. But deep in the woods, something moved, a shadow, watching, listening, and waiting. The next morning, the forest felt heavier. The air was thick with silence, like it was holding its breath. Mirenya, remembering her name clearly, woke up before the sun rose. She turned to look at Iran. He was already awake, sitting near the fire with his back straight and eyes fixed on the woods. He hadn't said another word since last night, but everything had changed between them. Now she knew who he was. Now she knew he had seen the fire that destroyed her life. And now, she wanted answers. She crawled out from under the fur blanket and sat beside him. For a while she didn't speak. The flames danced softly. Then she asked, "Why didn't you ever come back?" Iran didn't look at her. He tossed a stick into the fire. "I was hunted too." She blinked. "By who?" He pointed to the sky, then made a motion with his fingers like smoke rising. "The men in black coats, fire-marked men. They killed your father, took your mother. They thought I burned with the house." Mara's heart dropped. "My father died that night." Iran nodded slowly. "He fought. They feared him, but he couldn't stop them all." Mara covered her face with her hands. All her life, she had believed her parents had abandoned her or maybe lost her, but now she knew the truth. They hadn't left her. They had been taken, destroyed, and Iran, the boy they called a savage, was the only one who had seen it all. "Why would they do this?" she asked, voice shaking. Iran pulled out a folded cloth from his bag. He unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a map, hand-drawn, torn, stained by time. He pointed at a symbol in the corner, a black sun behind a triangle. "This," he said, "it's their mark. They use it on everything. Your family knew. Your father tried to stop them." Mara studied the map. It showed a hidden trail through the forest, a mountain beyond the trees, and a red circle deep inside the rocks. "What's there?" she asked. "Answers," Aaron replied. Before they could say more, a sudden noise broke the silence. A twig snapped nearby. Both of them turned quickly. Iran stood up, his hand on his blade. Mara rose behind him, more rustling. Leaves shifting, something or someone was moving closer. Iran motioned for her to stay back. He moved toward the sound, slow and silent like a ghost. Then something flashed through the trees. An arrow dotted struck the tree beside Iran's head. He ducked instantly and ran back toward Mara. "Run," he shouted. She didn't wait. She turned and limped through the forest, her injured legs slowing her down. Iran ran beside her, guiding her through the thick trees, helping her climb over roots and slide under low branches. Behind them, more arrows flew. One grazed Iran's arm. He didn't stop. After what felt like hours, they reached a narrow cave hidden behind a waterfall. Iran pulled her inside, soaked and shaking. They collapsed against the wall, gasping. Water dripped from their hair and clothes. Mara looked at his arm. The wound was bleeding. "You're hurt," she said. He nodded but said nothing. She ripped a piece from her sleeve and pressed it against the cut. Iran winced but didn't pull away. "Who were they?" she whispered. "Hunters," he said. "Not animals. Trained, paid, sent to finish what they started." Mara leaned back against the cave wall, her heart pounding. "They know I'm alive." Iran looked at her with serious eyes. "They always knew. They let time erase your memory. But now, you're awake." That sentence sat heavy in the air. She looked at the map again. Her fingers traced the path. "Then we need to go there," she said. "To the mountain?" Iran shook his head. "Too dangerous now. They will be watching the path." "Then, we find another way," she replied. "We can't keep running forever." Iran studied her for a moment, then slowly nodded. "There is one way. Old path. Forgotten." He pointed to a faded line on the map, one almost invisible. "But it's steep, cold, no food, no water." Mara's voice didn't shake. "Then we prepare." For the next 2 days, they stayed in the cave. Iran cleaned his wound with river water. Mara collected berries and roots while he taught her how to check traps. She wasn't strong yet, but she was learning. And every night, they sat by the fire, staring into the flames. The silence between them wasn't empty anymore, was full of memory. On the third morning, Iran handed her a small dagger. "Keep it close," he said. "Don't hesitate." She took it, gripping it tightly. "I won't." As they packed their things, Mara found herself staring at the carved stone he had given her. She held it in her palm, feeling the marks with her thumb. "What does this mean?" she asked. Iran answered softly. "It means, you're the key." She looked at him, confused. "Key to what?" He turned toward the rising sun and said only one word. "Everything." The old trail was colder than Mara expected. The trees changed as they climbed thinner, twisted by wind, their leaves sharp like blades. Fog moved low across the ground, wrapping around their ankles with every step. Iran led the way, silent and focused. He walked like he'd taken this path before, even though it was nearly invisible. Mara followed close behind, gripping her dagger and holding the map close to her chest. The wind howled through the cliffs above them. Birds were silent. The world felt forgotten. They hadn't spoken much since leaving the cave. Iran had warned her. This path is not only hard, it remembers pain. She hadn't understood at the time, but now, she felt it. Every corner of the trail felt like it carried a shadow. Every step forward made the past whisper louder. After hours of walking, they stopped near a jagged rock wall. Iran placed his hand on the stone and closed his eyes. Mara watched him carefully. He whispered something under his breath, a word she didn't understand. Then he stepped back. A low creaking sound echoed as part of the wall slowly shifted inward. Behind it was a narrow passage, hidden, dark. "What is this place?" she asked. Iran looked at her. "A place they couldn't destroy." They entered the passage, using a torch Iran lit from a piece of flint. The walls were smooth but marked with carving symbols, names, old drawings. Mara ran her fingers over one. It showed a man and a woman holding a child between them. She stopped walking. This is my family." Iran nodded. "Your bloodline is older than the war, older than the fire." She turned toward him. "Why did no one tell me?" His eyes were heavy with sadness. "Because truth makes people powerful, and they feared your truth." They moved deeper into the cave until it opened into a large chamber. At the center was a stone table, covered with dust around the walls. Shelves carved from rock held small objects, jewelry, scrolls, broken weapons, pieces of cloth. Mara stepped toward the table and picked up a necklace. It was simple, a clear stone in the shape of a tear. "My mother wore this," she whispered, "every day." Iran walked to the other side of the room and lit a second torch. Light spread across the wall, revealing a huge mural. Mara gasped. It showed a young girl standing in front of fire, holding a carved stone in her hand, the same as the one Iran had given her. Behind her stood other people in robes, warriors. A boy with a scar on his arm. Her voice trembled. "That's you, and that's me." Iran stepped beside her. They knew this would happen. They painted the future before it came. But how? She asked. They believed time was not a straight line. That memory could be passed through stone, through blood. He pointed at her. "You are not just a survivor, you are a return." Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the chamber. Dust fell from the ceiling. Mara froze. What was that? Iran grabbed his blade. They followed us. Mara backed toward the wall, heart racing. How? You said this path was forgotten. Someone remembered. A second crack. Then shouting, boots on stone, Iran blew out the torches. Darkness swallowed them. He grabbed her hand and pulled her into a side tunnel. The voices grew louder behind them. Mara could barely see. Her breath echoed. Every sound felt too loud. They moved quickly, deeper and deeper into the stone. After what felt like forever, the tunnel opened into a tight ledge overlooking the forest below. They were high above the trees now. Clouds touched the peaks nearby. Iran motioned for silence and pointed across the ledge to a narrow wooden bridge, old, swinging in the wind. We have to cross. He whispered. Mara looked at the drop. If it breaks, he didn't wait. He stepped onto the bridge, slow and steady. The ropes groaned, but held. Mara followed, holding the ropes tightly. Below them, jagged rocks waited. The wind pushed against her, cold and wild. Halfway across, a voice shouted behind them. There, don't let them escape. Arrows flew. One struck the wooden plank near her feet. She screamed. Iran turned, pulled a dagger from his belt, and threw it. It hit one of the hunters in the leg. The man dropped, howling. Keep going, Iran shouted. Mara pushed forward. Faster now. Another arrow flew, grazing her shoulder. She cried out but didn't stop. Iran reached the other side and grabbed her hand, pulling her the last few steps. They dove behind a rock just as another arrow flew past. Mara panted, holding her bleeding arm. They won't stop, will they? Iran shook his head. No, not until they finish what they started. She looked at him, eyes full of pain and fire. Then we don't run anymore. Iran stared at her, surprised. We fight, she said. He nodded slowly, and from the shadows behind them, a quiet voice answered, then you'll need help. They both turned. A woman stepped out of the mist holder, her face lined with time, but her eyes bright. Iran's face went pale. You were dead. The woman smiled. Not yet. Mara looked between them, confused. Who is she? She asked. Iran's voice was barely a whisper. My mother. The woman stood still, her cloak fluttering in the wind, eyes fixed on Iran. For a long moment, no one spoke. Mara's mind raced. Iran's mother. She was supposed to be dead, part of the old story, lost in the fire like the others. But she was here, alive, and somehow, waiting for them. Iran slowly stepped forward. They said you were gone. I searched the ashes. The woman nodded. They wanted you to believe that. If you thought I was dead, you'd run far and never look back. That was the only way to keep you alive. Iran's voice broke. You left me alone. Her eyes softened. I saved you, and now you've done what none of us could. You brought her back. She turned to Mara. Child, you don't know who you really are, do you? Mara looked down. I don't even know why I'm alive. The woman walked slowly to her and touched her cheek. You're alive because the forest remembered you, because your blood called the mountain, because someone who was once a boy chose not to forget you. Mara's eyes filled with tears. My family? Were they part of all this? The woman nodded. Your father was a guardian, your mother a keeper of the old ways. They fought against the Black Sun, the same mark on the men chasing you. But they were betrayed. Someone close let the enemy inside. Mara whispered. My uncle. The woman didn't answer, but her silence said everything. She motioned them toward a small, hidden cave behind the rocks. Inside it was warmer. There were supplies, old books, food, even a blanket laid out like she had been living there a long time. Mara sat down, exhausted. Iran stayed near the entrance, always watching, always ready. The woman stirred a pot over, a small flame. The smell of herbs filled the space. You're not just someone they want to kill, she said to Mara. You're someone they fear. Why? Mara asked. The woman placed a bowl of soup in front of her. Because you carry the key, not just the stone Iran gave you. You carry a memory they can't erase. A truth too dangerous to stay buried. Mara pulled the carved stone from her pocket. The woman took it gently, turning it in her hand. This is one of 7. Each one unlocks a different truth. Together, they tell a story the world tried to forget. Your family was guarding the first 2. When they were attacked, the stones were scattered. Yours was saved by him. She nodded toward Iran. Now you must find the others. Mara leaned forward. Do you know where they are? The woman reached under her cloak and pulled out an old scroll. She unrolled it on the ground. It was fragile, marked with faded ink. This shows the last known locations. One in the ruins of the Red Valley, one in the caves near the frozen river. The rest are hidden. Iran stepped closer. We'll go after them, but they're tracking us. The woman smiled faintly. Then we must become ghosts. That night, they made a plan. Mara listened carefully as Iran's mother explained secret paths through the mountains, signs to look for, people who might still help. She spoke in a soft but sharp voice, like someone who had waited years for this moment. At one point, she pulled out a box from under a stone slab. Inside was a folded piece of paper, sealed with wax. She handed it to Mara. Your mother wrote this before the fire. Mara's hands shook as she broke the seal and opened it. My dearest Mara, if you are reading this, then you have already seen too much pain. I hoped you would grow far from danger, but fate does not sleep. There is power in your blood, not magic, but memory. What you carry is not just history, but the key to a better world. Trust Aaron. He was chosen to protect you, even before he knew it. Love. Mother Mara folded the letter slowly, holding it to her chest. Her tears fell silently. She hadn't heard her mother's voice in years, but these words, they made her feel seen, loved, remembered. Suddenly Iran stood sharply. Footsteps, he whispered. They all froze. The woman grabbed her bow. Iran pulled out his blade. Mara held her dagger close. Outside, voices murmured, they're near. I saw smoke. Check the rocks. Quickly the woman whispered, go through the back tunnel. I'll slow them. Iran grabbed Mara's hand and pulled her toward the shadows at the back of the cave. No, Mara said. We can't leave her. But the woman was already moving toward the entrance, calm and steady. I waited too long to lose this chance, she said. Go. Find you again. Iran pushed open a hidden slab in the wall. Behind it, a narrow tunnel led downward into the dark. He turned back just once, just long enough to see his mother draw her bow and take aim at the first soldier to step into the light. Then he and Mara disappeared into the shadows. They ran for what felt like hours. No torches, no talking, just the sound of their feet and their breath and the weight of everything they were now carrying. When they finally reached the end of the tunnel, they stepped out into a mist-covered valley. Below them, the land stretched wide, red and cracked, marked by ancient symbols carved into the earth. Mara stared in awe. The red valley. Aaron nodded. The first stone waits. But behind them, high in the cliffs, smoke began to rise and a scream echoed in the night. Mara turned, eyes full of fear. Do you think she survived? Aaron didn't answer. But in his silence, something broke, and something awakened. The red valley stretched like a wound across the earth. Dust rose with every step Mara took, clinging to her skin and stinging her eyes. The symbols carved into the rocks were massive, weathered, and strange. Some looked like animals, some like eyes. Aaron walked ahead, scanning the ground carefully. He didn't speak much since they left the tunnel. His mother's fate hung in the silence between them. Mara wanted to ask, but didn't. The pain in his eyes was louder than any answer. They reached the ruins by midday. Half-buried stone structures, poked out from the dry earth like broken bones. The air was dry, still, and heavy with old energy. Mara felt it in her chest, the weight of something forgotten, something sacred. Is this where the second stone is? She asked softly. Aaron nodded, but his eyes remained alert. It should be, he said. But we're not alone. They entered what remained of an ancient temple. Most of its roof was gone, but the walls still stood tall, covered in faded drawings. In the center was a circular platform surrounded by 7 pillars. One of them had collapsed. The rest stood like quiet guards. Aaron led her to the middle. This place was once a gathering hall, he explained, before the war. Keepers used it to protect the stones. Mara looked around. How do we find it? Aaron walked to one of the pillars and began brushing dust off the carvings. Each pillar tells part of the story, he said. If we read it right, it will lead us to the stone's resting place. Mara moved to another pillar, copying his actions. As she wiped the surface, her fingers stopped on a familiar shaipa, tear-shaped gem, like the pendant her mother once wore. Here, she said. This symbol. It matches the one I saw in the mountain cave. Aaron walked over, studying the carving. You're right, this is a marker. The stone must be below us. He stepped back, then stomped hard on the center of the platform. Dust flew up, but something echoed underneath. Hollow. There's a chamber, he said. He pulled out his blade and pressed it into a narrow crack near the stone tile. Slowly, he lifted the cover. Beneath it was a spiral staircase, dark and cold. Mara stared into it, then met his eyes. Ready? He didn't smile, but he nodded. They descended slowly. The air turned colder, and the light dimmed. At the bottom was a wide, round room. In its center was a pedestal, and on it rested the second carved stone, this one glowing faintly. Blue, it pulsed like it had a heartbeat. Mara stepped closer, her hand trembling. As she reached out, Aaron grabbed her wrist. Wait, he whispered. It's guarded. She looked around. The walls were covered in paintings, stories, wars, and a figure holding the stones, crowned with fire. But there was something else, too, hidden in the corner. A statue almost human, but made of dark metal and bone. Its eyes were closed, its arms crossed. What is that? She asked. Sentinel, Aaron said. Old protector? If you take the stone the wrong way, it wakes. Mara took a deep breath. So how do we take it the right way? Aaron looked at the floor, then at the wall behind the statue. There, in faint red writing, was a phrase in a language she didn't know. Aaron read it aloud in a low voice. The statue didn't move. He read it again. Still nothing. Then Mara stepped forward and repeated the words. The moment her voice hit the last syllable, the pedestal dimmed. The blue glow softened. The statue stayed still. She reached out, lifted the stone. Nothing happened. Aaron exhaled, but then a whisper. A cold wind rushed through the chamber. The statue's eyes opened. Bright red. Run. Aaron shouted. They bolted up the stairs. The sound of cracking stone behind them. The ground shook as the sentinel moved, its heavy steps pounding through the underground chamber. Mara slipped once. Aaron caught her. Dust fell from the ceiling. As they reached the top. Outside, The temple was no longer empty. Men in black uniforms stood in a wide circle, weapons drawn, faces hard. They were surrounded. One man stepped forward. Tall, clean, with sharp eyes. Mara froze. Her uncle. Well, he said calmly. You led us right to it. Iran pulled Mara behind him. Blade in hand. Her uncle smiled. Still hiding behind this animal. Are we? Mara stepped forward. He's not the animal here. The man's smile faded. Give me the stone, Mara. It doesn't belong to you. It never did. Yes, she said firmly. It does. It always did. You lied to me. You burned our home. You tried to kill us. I protected you, he snapped. You were just a child. You had no idea the danger your parents brought on us.